Live on the mics.
This is a par 4.
5, 5, 4, 3.
Welcome, everyone, and pull up a seat at the table. It's Lunchtime in Rome. Tonight's episode 202, entitled Very Good Relationships. How are your relationships? How would you describe your closest relationship? There's an ideal answer, and we'll be talking about that and how to begin to get there at the table this evening. So pull up a seat at the table and join us. First-time listeners can subscribe on your favorite podcast app or watch us live or later at youtube.com/Lunchtime in Rome. Visit us at lunchtimeinrome.com, and while there, you can take our relational needs questionnaire. Make sure to follow us on all social media, and it'd be great if you gave us a 5-star review. Jay, what's this podcast about?
Being alone is the worst. Good times aren't as good, and bad times are worse when you're all alone. Romans 12:15 says to rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. That is how you keep people from being alone, and what this podcast is all about. We demonstrate that in the first 15 or 20 minutes of the podcast, and we talk about it for the rest. So while it may not be 12:15 in Rome, we're treating it like it is
Lunchtime in Rome. So we've had an incredible stretch of weather.
Oh,
I
Yeah.
don't remember anything like it.
Okay. I don't either. And I feel like we've, at least me, I've been taking advantage of it.
Yes.
Very much. Like, we've done a disc golf trip, which
Yep.
I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit. I've been to Kennywood twice with Maggie. We've been to Brian's pool twice. Like, we are hitting summer hard right off the bat, and I'm loving it. Like,
Yeah.
it just feels so good. Maggie's loving the pool, except for the bees. And,
oh, the bees.
oh, the bees. She's going to hate it when I want to, when I start to, keep the bees.
But don't you remember, like, 2 weeks ago, we had a stretch of rain and we didn't see the sun for like a week, right?
Yeah.
And it was cold and like in the
Well,
40s and stuff.
I feel like up until spring, we didn't see the sun for like 5 months. Like, it was a long time. Like, it was a long
winter
stretch there.
was
Winter
windy,
was dreary, man.
Not snowy,
Windy, not snowy.
and
Yeah.
cloudy.
Yeah, just glum.
But yeah.
We
the
don't
past
get
week's
weather
been
like
great.
this.
No.
Like where it is like 80 degrees and like 2% humidity.
Yeah.
But it just feels glorious.
The wind blows, and you're like, and now I'm cooler.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Instead
Sweat
of
works.
wetter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been awesome, and we've been having a lot of fun in the sun. And Amy, like, the outside of our house looks amazing. She's been out there often planting flowers.
Love the black
and
mulch.
cleaning
Big
up.
fan of the black mulch.
Yeah, it's nice.
What a
Nice.
wonderful
Good
sight
look.
it was showing up for podcast tonight. And I mean, not only is it the time of year that it's still daylight when we're doing this at 8:30, but apparently Maggie's in bed.
Yeah.
Your wife is out there,
Yeah.
just in her element,
Right.
still gardening, got daylight left
Still
after
got daylight, yeah.
Maggie's bedtime.
And
That's
even though
awesome.
she's in a big girl bed. Yeah.
Yeah.
You still got the camera?
Yeah.
I wonder, because I'm like,
she
you're
has
down
it.
here.
She
oh,
has
she has
it
it
out
out
there.
there.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Funny you mentioned the black mulch because you laughed. I'm assuming that you talked to Amy about it. Well, like, it's one of those things where, like, I used to like red mulch, and then I was like, I don't really like that anymore. And then, I think then I wanted to go to black mulch or whatever, and we never did red mulch here. It was at the old house. And now I'm kind of like, I kind of want the dark brown, It all looks good. It's this is such a...
I'm surprised you guys
stupid
go
conversation.
bags. Actually, I got to order mine tomorrow, and I'm up to like 2 scoops.
Well...
What do you call it? Like 2 yards. That's the word the cool kids use.
But her
You get the
her
word.
goal is out there is to not really need the mulch or anything eventually. Like, her goal is to have so much like good stuff in the garden that you're not
I know
even
what
going
you're
to see
talking.
it.
Like an English garden kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
just growing all together.
Everything. And if you look at our neighbor Becky, that's the way hers is. Like, everything in there is good. There's not like weeds. Like, it's weeded, and it's all like, she just wants all plants.
Well,
Oh yeah, that's her thing, not mine.
well, that's why she said you were like, how come you didn't get dark mulch or dark brown? And I said, did you say to him, are we outside? Do you get a vote out here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, apparently he does, because he said, I used to like the red mulch. Then
Well, he's allowed to have an opinion.
We gotta
It
go.
doesn't trump hers.
Well, and I used
especially post-purchase.
I used to lay down the mulch.
did you?
Just like you used to
Am I
lay
marking
down
that
the
one?
law.
Am I marking that one?
I don't even know what we're using it for, but that's going to be a tagline. Let me tell you,
Well,
buddy. Back
I
in the
used to
day,
lay down the mulch.
used to lay down the mulch.
I laid it on thick.
Telling Maggie, ah man, I used to lay down the mulch for your mom.
That's back when when Brian delivered Tyler Mountain Water.
I never did that.
I never heard of that.
I never did that.
You know where they like to lay down the mulch? Titusville.
Oh yeah, that's true. I don't know. Is that a
Titusville mulch.
segue? I have nothing to say about Titusville.
We've never heard of it.
Okay, good.
I've never known you not to have anything to say about Titusville.
I'm gonna talk about
Wait, what was the gangs in Titusville? The something street weirdos.
no Walnut Street wackos.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you mean were?
Yeah. Sorry. Dang.
Don't go there if you don't know the handshake.
They're
Don't
coming
go.
after me
man.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of good weather, we just had Memorial Day weekend, and
That's true. And the weather was good.
and the weather was good. But no, listen,
All right, Brian, what
and
do you
we-
got?
I had a
and we
really
spoke about
great
it.
4-day weekend that was just so rejuvenating. And as you guys know, it was disc golf. Those first couple days, Friday and Saturday, and we said that was like the purest disc golf trip. Even it was not the longest because it was
No.
just a one,
It was all
overnight
disc golf.
sort of a quick thing. But it was we were either disc golfing or sleeping.
Or eating. And that was it.
yeah.
54 holes, 35,000 steps, 90 floors of elevation change.
Wow.
We did some stuff. It was awesome.
It was exhausting.
one of my
and
favorite
awesome.
trips we've ever had.
And I will honestly say, after lunch, like we were all like dead after that morning round. After lunch, I was like, I could do another one. I really think.
Oh,
'cause
sure.
If it was 80 degrees,
You mean on the way
and
home?
yeah.
Okay.
And 80%
Yeah.
humidity, as it has been, or 90%. I mean, our humidity gets up there usually this time of year, and for until September. Like
I could maybe do like a
I wouldn't
Monroeville.
have, but this was
Yeah.
the
Grove
weather
City.
felt so good.
Yeah.
And
And-
then, go ahead.
No, your story.
Well, and then we got home and still had a weekend. You know what I mean? Because it was
Yeah.
Sunday into Monday, Memorial Day. So hey, there's those 2 days to like let the body heal.
Rest up.
And went to a friend's house and hung out at this like amazing pool situation.
He means
and-
Brian,
It's Brian.
That's me.
who was very much missed on that disc golf trip. We're happy to love and support him and not guilt him or anything.
Right.
I don't want him to feel left out as he doesn't or would. I don't know. But very much missed, but glad you got some time.
We talked about you a bit, like in good ways.
Oh, good. Yeah, it was nice to stay home. I mean, you know me. I would love to have been on the trip.
I could have heard you swearing at the trees at Orange Crush.
Yeah, probably.
Oh man, dude, it was gosh.
I'd like to
so
think I'm a
many
kinder,
trees.
gentler disc golfer this year. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah, I'd like to think I'm a great pianist. I've never done it.
I might not be kinder and gentler to the trees or my discs, but maybe the outbursts won't be as fierce. But yeah, I just stuck around the house. We and home. It was prom weekend. Ethan went to prom, and obviously Bella went too. So prom was a big night. We had some kids sleep over, and then we did Kennywood on Friday. And I got to catch up on a bunch of stuff on Saturday that I'd wanted to do because I wanted to get the pool going for Memorial Day to have you guys over. And so I was able to get a lot done. I finally got the heater working, which for anybody that doesn't know, we had got a heater last year.
The word is saga.
It's been a saga, and I'm glad it's finally to the end. But our neighbors bought us a heater last year, and these heaters aren't cheap, like $2,500 for this heater. And he sprung for it. They sprung for it because they like to come over and swim, and we just kind of have that relationship where they come over.
Normal people that don't like cold water.
Correct. Right. I don't mind it so much. Although, man, with this heater though, like it really, I think my skin's not as thick as it used to be.
You old softy.
Yeah, 46 is starting to make me a little softer. I also had a birthday 2 weeks ago. One of the 4 I'll have this year. But yeah, I mean, so we got the heater going. It just felt good to get all that done and have everybody over. It really was a nice day on Monday, and it had been a long time since all of us had been together and just kind of hung out like that. So that was really nice. I had some good work things happen today.
Oh.
Yeah. I finally was able to get my guy one of the key components that I've been desperately needing to get him. He started to use it. So that's a big deal.
That's a win.
It's a big win.
You needed a win,
That's a big win. And
especially
then,
with him.
correct. And I mean, there's going to be bugs that we still have to work out with, but at least it's in his hands. He's starting to use it, and it just, that's a big load off my shoulders.
That's huge.
Yeah. And then I also was part of an investor meeting. So my company's looking to raise money. The owner of the company's looking to raise money for this entire business line. And it went really well. I mean, looking to raise like 1.2 million. And it was nice to be a part of that meeting, and I was telling Eric right before we started, to not feel anxiety. Like, it's just, I get in and I just talk about what I know in my life and the things I've done. And so it was a really, really positive day. I was telling Eric too, I woke up this morning, 5:45, and just woke up with the sun and no alarms or anything like that. No 4-year-olds, that you can't put on pause. And just had a good morning, and it's been a good day.
I hear the music in my head, and I envision you just like sitting up in bed and stretching and a big grin.
No,
on
I
your
was
face.
on the couch because I got
Oh boy!
about 2:30 in the morning. I feel like this poking on my face.
It's your neighbor.
It's Keith. He's like, "Why isn't the heater on?"
No, he's asking you to stop snoring.
Yeah, I've got it a lot more under control, but not last night. And so Lex was poking me in my face, and rather than, I was just like, "Look, I'm just gonna go to the couch."
I don't know what you're saying, Lex. I'm not snoring.
So I went to the couch. That's where I woke up, and it wasn't like the Disney wake up and there's music playing. It's
Animals tending.
It was
to
definitely
you.
more like, but okay, there's no alarm. I'm good. I can do this, because I want to get up and make bacon for Ethan. Ethan eats bacon every morning, and if I don't have it made the night before, or we haven't made a bunch and we're out, I feel bad not giving the kid bacon before school, because then I'd give him bacon and drive him to school.
Respect.
I just saw it in the Shield.
Oh, God. Shield update.
Well, just go ahead and mark that. The very briefly on the disc golf trip, you guys know that Eric bought me the Power Disc Golf Academy curriculum and Amy, pardon me. Never once given her credit for that.
Paul
And
Yellowberry.
Maggie.
Yeah. And I've been practicing, and it's been hurting my back because now I'm apparently throwing correctly and everything else. And the disc golf trip was really big. That my back didn't really hurt. I mean, it was a little sore, but whatever. But that I played very well. And not only did I play very well, but like I putted well, which I've been working a lot on my putting, and I was throwing it incredibly further than I've ever thrown before. I mean, you were there at.
Yeah, Seth Burton.
Seth Burton.
I remember the drive that you're talking about.
Well, there were a few,
or at least I've got one in my head. I was like,
the one
that's not going to ever stop.
where the girls were kicking the soccer ball across the street. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it was like 375, maybe 380.
You're saying you feel like you're getting like maybe an extra 75 feet.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
great.
just, and I can trust
huge.
it, and it's going there, and it's like, okay. I mean, I love the sport no matter what, but I put a lot of time into it, and it's
showing.
paying off.
Yeah.
Have you adapted your driver discs to the new form that you have?
Yo, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everything I have.
Yeah.
So that was just exciting. So that's that. Last week I gave the update on everything else that's been going on. And so there was a death. My mother passed away. But now this week, we celebrate life in our household, as there have been 5 new births, if not 6.
Wow.
This is going to take a turn. I don't know what's happening.
4 baby groundhogs.
So not in the house. That's good.
Well, not yet. No, I'm just kidding. No. On our household, in our property. Which happens every spring, and it's just fun. And like they come out super tiny and climbing all over mom, and mom kind of bats them off
Baby groundhog.
every year.
Huh.
They get to about where they are. In a week, they get kind of almost normal sized. And it's funny because like they learn their boundaries. Like I'll see them on the driveway where I never see the adult groundhogs on the driveway, and they just look at me and they run away. And
They don't know that they're not allowed to be there yet.
Well, no, they just get scared, and like they come out of the hole by the shed, and they'll just be climbing all over top of mom, and mom just kind of bats them off, and they go rolling over, or they'll play/fight with each other. And so it's kind of like the best way to have a pet, because I don't have to feed them, I don't have to do anything, and then they're gone. And then today, my neighbor John called, who is the great neighbor, retired guy that I've borrowed every one of his tools once and broken them, and he refuses to ever replace them. And he doesn't call that often, but he called. He wanted to talk to me about something. And so, of course, and again, on the home phone, I had just made the statement in my head that I want to make my answering machine message. Everyone who calls me on my home phone that I know is dead. So call me on my cell phone. And if you don't have my cell phone, don't call me. I really want to leave that as my voicemail message.
I didn't even know you had a home phone
I
and an
do.
answering
Oh,
machine.
yeah. Wow. Yeah. And we try to get rid of it, but it makes everything else more expensive with Verizon. So it was just like, well, we'll just keep
That's
it.
how
Plus,
they
it's
get you.
the number Mom knew. But John called and he said, hey, I have something to tell you. And I immediately go to, he's dying. His wife's dead. What? And it was that there was a baby deer in the weeds behind my backyard.
Oh, yeah.
And it was laying down, and that I should know that it's there, not to bother it.
Right.
He goes, he's like, I know you know this, Jay, but I just didn't want you to startle it and have it run away. And, hopefully the mom will come back and whatever else. And I could barely see it. And I was going to go trim the hedges down there. And so it was a little baby deer. And then by this evening, it was up running around with its mom
There you go.
and maybe its cousin, because there was another baby.
Got a lot of wildlife in Penthouse.
Dude,
We do.
I mean, like Hunter said last year when he was working on our deck, as compared to working on your deck,
Right.
Huntsman Projects, shout out, that he lives in Plum on the border of the forest, basically. And in the time that he was building our deck, he saw more wildlife than he's ever seen in his backyard.
We have had a family of deer. So we've been in our house 21 years now, and there's been a family of like generation upon generation of deers coming
And their children.
and their
children.
children.
And
And
their
their children. But yeah, we always have, I mean, sometimes I'll see 6 and 7 of them just in my backyard. I've seen turkeys coming through the yard.
I've never seen a fox, never seen a coyote.
I've seen a fox. I have heard the coyotes because we have that space behind our house where
Right.
like a bunch of land meets. But
Yeah, I made the joke to Tommy, one time, you come to my backyard and hunt.
Yeah.
He rolled his eyes, and I'm like,
no, seriously.
I'm talking like 19 at a time. Like, I'm not talking like, yeah, there's a family of 4. I'm talking like you can close your eyes, fire an arrow, and you're eating that night.
Well, I think it is hilarious that they'll drive an hour and 15 minutes to go deer hunting. I'm like, they're all over the place.
Why don't they just go up to the church and all our land, like for bow? I guess if they want to actually shoot one,
Right. Yeah.
right. They'll do bow
people
hunting
have-
up there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. But
Ooh.
it's what?
No, please, I
You
didn't
can
want to
bow
interrupt.
hunt. You
but,
can bow hunt in Penn Hills.
Right. Bow hunting.
Okay, so speaking of the church land, I was up throwing. This was, I don't know, a week ago, and there is a tent, or was a tent.
It's a blind. It's over on the pipeline.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my brother's.
Okay.
It's for bow season, but nobody hunts on our property.
And also, speaking of the church, you guys did a bunch of work on a certain tee or a certain basket.
We did.
Oh, yeah.
We did. We did have some vandalism. We pretty sure who it was, and so we offered. We reached out to that family and said, we don't want money for it. We'd love to teach you how to respect the course and play the game. And if nothing else, please don't destroy any more of our stuff.
Right.
And it was on a Wednesday, so it could be happening right now. And I saw them yesterday, by the way, the 2 kids.
Yeah.
When I was going back and forth between the church and the house for different things. And they were walking along Jefferson, so I just kept going back and forth, like to see where they were going.
Yeah.
And God bless them. They should have been paranoid. There's a number of times I went back and forth. They never noticed me.
You rolled past them in like this old van.
A lot
with,
of
like,
red
weird
cars
music
in Penn
playing.
Hills.
Yeah. And so I eventually just stayed in the exit of our property, waiting for them to see if they came over the hill. And then you pulled in for worship practice, and then I went one more time and I lost them. But the point is, we repaired it
I
with
blew it.
a big pipe.
It looks awesome now. I mean, it's
Yeah.
better than it was.
And filled it up with some concrete. Well, actually,
Not that I want to do that again.
no, we're good on that. Move the camera. So now everybody who's listening, if you're thinking of damaging our disc golf course, everything is under camera. At least
Any
3 of
response
11
from
holes.
the family
Not
as
yet.
of yet? Okay.
So
I hope there is. I mean,
That'd be very.
like communication.
That'd be very good, wouldn't it?
yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
and that is something we're going to talk about this week and next week, and whenever we're not talking about postpartum depression for probably the next several weeks. If you ask people, how are your relationships or how's your marriage? When I meet with a couple for pre-marriage teaching, crap, I got to call somebody back. It's only been today. It's fine.
Oh, that's fine.
But the first question first part of their first homework is to ask every married couple. And I encourage everybody here at the table, everybody literally and figuratively at the table, to ask people in their lives, hey, how's your marriage? And just shut up. Don't go on, everything else, and just listen to the answer. And I mean, I think out of the 35 to 40 marriages I've done, I don't know that I've ever had somebody come back and say, oh, I asked so-and-so, and they said, very good.
That's fine.
Fine.
It's all right.
It's good.
Good.
We're working on it.
You know,
Yeah.
better than most.
Right.
Doing okay.
We're making it.
You know, there's ups
All
and
ball and
downs.
chain.
Yeah, you get the negatives.
Happy wife, happy life.
Get
I hate
me
that stuff.
started.
I hate.
I hate that.
Hate
happy wife, happy life.
We should do an entire podcast on that.
No, but that's true.
Chris is like,
Don't get me started.
Chris is like, well, at least
I'm not saying
the
it doesn't.
converse is
Yeah,
true.
If
I'm not saying
you're-
it doesn't impact you.
If your happiness
Here we go.
is hinged to another being, never mind. I'll stop.
Go finish it. People are on their head like,
That's
what?
fine. That's
What?
worth talking
Yeah.
about. We're
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about
Your happiness and your contentment and your evaluation of your marriage is contingent on another person who may or may not be and this is not directly at Amy, but who may or may not be wildly going through things like it's like building a sandcastle next to the ocean. That's how I describe it. Happy wife, happy life. You're building a sandcastle next to the ocean. You're trying to base your well-being on a volatile person, and you are losing respect for yourself. And I could go on, but I
Is
won't.
the opposite, though, true?
Happy life, happy wife.
No, unhappy wife. Unhappy wife.
No, because you can just be like,
unhappy
F
life.
you. F you, I'm going to be happy no matter what. I don't care if you're not happy.
Well, how is that healthy though?
Oh, I'm not saying either is healthy. We're not talking about healthy. We're just saying, is it true?
Right.
No, I will say, like, if Amy's going through something, I will feel like anxious about.
You're going to feel
Right.
the weight of your partner's
But it's not the
Right.
barometer.
struggles. No,
But it's
you
not the
should
barometer
never
of-
make that
right,
the barometer.
Right.
No, and I would say this goes back to how I had to come to grips 2 to 3 years ago with Rachel going to work, and she was not happy. Like she was committed to it. She was, she found worth and calling in her job. She came home toast every day. I had to come to grips with my wife is unhappy, not with me, but with work, and I can't fix it.
Right.
And I'm not going to walk around all moody. Like I would comfort her as much as she wanted, which was minimal, and then leave her go, which is what she wanted, and then move along. So I had unhappy wife, but I had happy life. I just want to do a brief step aside. You mentioned building your house.
Sandcastles next to the ocean.
Right. During my mom's funeral, the priest was talking, and it was going a little long, and it was going a little long. And then he said, and it's like the man who built his house on sand. And in my head, I went, oh, crap. He's still got to go over the man that built his house out of sticks, and then the man that built his house out of stone. This is going to take forever.
And then the big bad wolf comes and tries to blow all of them down.
And it was a few minutes before I was like, oh, no, that's not scripture. That's the three little pigs. Ah, sweet. We might get out of this sooner than later. That's the kind of grieving I do in a Catholic mass for my mother. Oh, my gosh. So we want to look at the fact that when God created everything, he said it was good. Everything. The birds, the animals, the earth, the water, the expanse over the two, bing, bang, and boom. They were all good. But when he made Adam, it was not good. And again, I don't care if you believe in a 7-day creation. I don't care even if you think that Genesis is just a story and an illustration. It was written. And so even if you don't believe that it was factual, it was written as such that when he created Adam, it was not good. Why? Because he was alone. But once he created a relationship, he created Eve, the match for Adam, it was very good. And so the significant thing is that's how important relationships are. That was God's first solution to his first problem, air quotes, on earth. But that the goal of every relationship is very good. And we went over it on April 14th, somewhere in there, of 2019. It's the only time we've really touched on this topic. And like we've done with the emotional needs, we took deep dives into each individual emotional need. So we're going to take a deep dive into what does a very good relationship look like. And we're going to start kind of by looking at the need.
Do we need to talk about Dan Leopold?
You know what? Here's a very good relationship. The one that I have with Dan Leopold. And the reason why we're bringing up Dan Leopold, and I would say he has a very good relationship. I don't see he and his wife very often, but we want to point him out because we did not mention him as a regular at the table on our 200th episode. But I am going to share with you guys.
And we should have. He sent me a bottle of whiskey.
He did. And we've shared his Christmas list every year, birthday list.
I've had hot dogs with him.
What more do you want? He wrote to me Sunday evening, the sympathy card. Did I share this with you guys? The sympathy card for your mom is going to arrive in maybe 40 days. I need something to happen. Then I'm going to try something and hopefully include that in the card. Hope you are well. If there is a silver mixing spoon that no one has dibs on, grab it for me. I'll add it to my collection and it will be the Mitlow spoon. Yes, I have spoons from people that I care about that are in heaven now. Their spirits help me mix stuff.
Wow.
He does have some
Love
spoons
it.
there.
And I
Love
shared it with my family, and like Marilyn was like, I mean, the spoon thing is cute and all, but like, I really want to know what he's doing. Like, why is it
Right.
going to take 40 days? And I said, he's
Like-
probably sending something into space.
Something-
He
Right.
does
What
Something
that.
needs to
planetary
happen.
thing needs to happen in space for this? Yeah, I get it.
That's
That's cool.
That's a great text. I hope you save that.
I got a million of them.
In
That's what
about
he's good
40
for.
days.
I still got to get him. He wants one of the bricks from Verona Road heading
Yeah.
up to St. Joe's. I
And we
snagged him one of
can't
those.
give him one of mine because we'll figure it out.
No, he would.
He would know.
He'd smell it, touch it, lick it. He'd say, "That's not Verona. It's not even Verona Road. It's Front Street, First Street, Second Street,
Yeah.
I think it might
Second,
be
I
second.
think.
Second Avenue."
But let's talk about the history of divorce.
You know, speaking of rocky
That was
roads,
smooth.
America has been divorcing
Speaking of
itself
bumpy
of brick
roads.
roads.
Speaking
Yes.
of bumpy,
now
bricky
we
roads.
want to take a look at, there are a lot of bad relationships out there. And is that something new? Is that, people say, oh, people don't stay together like they used to and everything else. So we took a mini deep dive and we want to share it with you of divorce rates in the last 100 years. And we won't spend forever on it, but we're going to spend some time on it and look at what were the reasons why there were either more or less divorces each decade.
So the guide for this evening is the divorce rates. We're going to start in last 100 years. We're going to start in the 30s,
1930s,
1930s.
not the 2030s.
That hasn't happened yet. We can't predict that.
In the 1830s, it doesn't apply.
It doesn't matter. Well, the trend thus far in history has been for the divorce rate to increase. This isn't quite the case with the 30s. Due to the Depression in the 30s, many couples stayed together because they couldn't afford the aftermath of divorce. It wasn't until the unemployment rate went down that the increasing divorce rate trend continued. Unemployment was at its highest in 1933, and as the unemployment rate declined through the late 30s, the divorce rate increased. 1930, 16%.
Isn't it interesting? The more money you have, the more divorces there are.
I find it interesting you can't. It was. It's cheaper to keep her, right?
Well,
I like that one better
Well-
than Happy Life, Happy Wife. I tell you that one.
and I'm going to paraphrase this, and I'm not sure if this is true back in the 30s because I wasn't there. But in America, the way some court systems work or individuals work, judges and whatnot, you could be okay splitting everything 50-50 with your spouse. And you're like, yep, we wrote it down all on paper and like, that's fine. And the judge will say, no, you need to hire a lawyer to go through all the motions and get all the things, down. And you can be like, no, we're good. Like, nope, you got to get a lawyer and you got to spend a ton of money
right.
on lawyers and then you're in the courtroom and then you're paying all these fees and like, you're just spending so much money to go through what could have been something simple and still tragic, but like something that you don't have to go through all this red tape and make it even worse than it is, and
Right. Traditionally, it was a lot harder to divorce than it is today.
Yeah, and we'll get to some of the reasons
Right.
for that ahead of,
Yeah.
down the line. But
Yeah.
like you said, Chris, cheaper to keep her. But one of the things that this makes me think about is you stayed married because it was convenient for an end goal. And I often think about that. How many couples continue to stay married because it's more convenient to do that to accomplish a goal rather than because it's very good for them and it's because what they want.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think there's a lot of couples that just say, you know what, we're just going to run out the clock with each other because just be messier if we don't.
And that ticks me off. And you know what else ticks me off?
What,
a tick
really?
on my thigh.
Oh,
Is that what happened?
I had one now.
Oh my
I was like, oh, that's
goodness.
itchy, but I have 2 mosquito bites. And I looked and I'm like, oh, that's a tick. So I went into your bathroom to see if I had any alcohol to sweat it out. But I just, no, just some hydrocortisone. So put it on there and make them suck on that.
Oh, you
Yeah,
mean
yeah.
he's on there?
Oh, he's there right
Oh,
now.
I'm sorry, dude.
I'm going to pull through.
How about 16% though? I mean, it's certainly by today's standards, or well, I shouldn't say that. By the standards we grew up with, always hearing like, well, divorce rate is about 50%. 16% in 1930. That's pretty low.
However, in the 40s, they saw a distinctive spike in divorce rates right after World War II. Again, just stop right there. Hey, we won the war. Yeah, it's over.
Goodbye.
Some have suggested this. Many families were strained under the burden of living with a man who may have been incapacitated during a war, trauma, or that many women had a newfound freedom in working and didn't want to give that up. Regardless, the spike in statistics suggests that the end of the war definitely put a strain on family life.
Wow. The end of the war. Like,
Yeah.
hey, he's gone. He's overseas. We're still together. Oh, he comes home. All right. Goodbye.
Well, yeah. I mean, and this is all speculation, and they say that in this statement too, like that. Well, some suggest, but the idea that okay, war's happening, we're all pulling together, right? And so nobody's divorcing somebody who's overseas fighting,
Cheating on them.
Oh, that I'm sure there's
not divorcing them.
right? And
That's
and-
cold-blooded.
And everybody's working at home. What's the name of the character? The
League of Their Own.
No, female character that like
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about.
Steamboat Sally. Phyllis the
Riveter.
factory worker.
Oh,
Rudy
yeah.
the Riveter.
I know.
Yeah, no,
It's
no,
something
it's
like that.
Something like
It's
that.
not Rudy.
It's Riveter.
Rosie.
Rosie.
Yeah, Rosie the so people were Rosie the Riveter and doing that. And then the guys come home and it's an amazing celebration. Hey, we won the war, but there's no doubt that it was an upheaval in life.
Well, and I'm not justifying anything because when you get married, it's through thick and thin. But like they come home a different person.
Yeah.
That's
certainly
like back
PTSD.
then. Well, and back then PTSD was shell shock. That's
Right.
what it was called.
And the women
you know?
had become different people at home. You know what I
like
mean?
it
Like
says.
it's all it's-
Everybody was so different in that short period of time. Like just crazy.
It's so funny because I think of
No, please.
I think of or had thought of post-war time as like this
Celebration.
Glorious.
like glorious, like
Everybody's
you
happy.
like you envision like the
ticker tape parade and the woman kissing the sailor.
yeah,
in the
and,
street.
and that was the baby boomers, like everybody's starting a family and
Right.
moving to the suburbs and that sort of thing.
Yeah, butterfly effect is pretty bad.
Well, and I think also like you said, Chris, you can get you get through something. We hold it together, and then once again, here comes the good times. Hey, we got through the Depression. Okay, now that's over. Divorce rates go up. Okay, we got through World War II, then divorce rates go up, and it shows you that you didn't get through it because you had a very good relationship.
Right.
You were committed to getting through it, or other things were taking precedence during the time. But what about the Cunninghams?
Well, did we mention that it was
The rate,
We
no.
went
Yeah.
from 16% in the 30s to 43% in the 40s, which is quite the jump.
That's intense.
Big jump.
Who are the Cunninghams?
In the 50s.
Oh, like Happy Days.
Yeah,
Nice.
they stayed together.
So 50s and 60s. So the 50s saw a decrease in divorce. And this this is I don't know. I know my perspective of the 50s is all like old TV shows, like
Leave it to
leave it
Beaver.
exactly.
I think of like the scene in the Back to the Future where he goes back in to 1955.
Yeah.
He walks into Hill Valley for the
Yeah.
first time.
Mr.
And
Sandman.
Mr. Sin. People
Yeah.
are like out like changing the car
Everybody's-
tires. and-
Yeah, everybody's happy. Nobody's
Andy-
getting
except
divorced.
for Biff.
Oh yeah, Biff
Well,
was never happy.
he was
Andy
never happy.
Griffin Show.
Oh, I love the Andy Griffith Show.
Well, like for me, it's closer to the year 2000 right now than when I was born was to 1950. Mm-hmm. Like that blows my mind.
Yep.
Yeah. But the rate decreased, remained relatively steady until I guess in 1967, divorce laws began to change. But in the 50s, it was 21%. For most of the 60s, it was still in the 20s, around 26%.
Why don't you take us into the 70s?
Okay. Well, here we go. Divorce rates jump in the 1970s. So they continue to rise, taking a big jump in the 70s. This may have been because, for the first time, couples have the option of a no-fault divorce.
Now, does that surprise you?
I'd have to think about what that is. I'm not even sure.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Well, I think it actually says that. Keep reading.
I'm going to keep going. It was also the first time a spouse could cite irreconcilable differences as the reason for the divorce, making it much easier to obtain. So there didn't need to be...
Keep reading.
It explains.
Okay. Prior to this point, anyone wanting to end their marriage had to prove adultery or cruelty in the marriage.
That would be the fault.
There we
So
go.
when it changed, it was you don't have to prove those things anymore. You can just say irreconcilable
Yep.
differences.
I don't like you.
And so a lot of this, we would be remiss if we didn't point out, women weren't working as much. A lot of women stayed in the home. And so they didn't have the financial means to get divorced. And so therefore the marriage rates were higher. And then so here you go no fault and, you can have irreconcilable differences. So it became really a women's rights issue, along with more women in the workplace.
And the numbers begin to turn into, again, what we grew up with. I say we because, we all did grow up in a similar era, but I assume you guys also heard the whole, just grew up with, 50% divorce rate, 50% divorce rate.
No, I distinctly remember that because, I had, I grew up born in 1971, so I'm in elementary school through the 70s, the end of the 70s into the early 80s. And I remember, so-and-so's parents got divorced. So it started happening more and more and more. And you're just like, they're one of those kids. It became the topic.
Yeah.
And then 1983, when my dad does his midlife crisis thing when I was 12 years old. Yeah. Going into 7th grade. And I was like, I'm one of those kids, and it was I became one of the half of the kids that I knew.
They never officially got divorced.
They did, but he moved in and out from 1983 to 1988 when he moved back in for good. They moved to Florida in January of 88. He moved back in. I'm doing it based on what year of high school I was in. December of that year, which was December of my senior year, 88, they moved to Florida. And then they got divorced, I believe, in 92 when he was having his, at least as much as we know, second affair.
So, and then they were
Divorced. They divorced.
Really?
They divorced in 92, 93.
Okay.
And that's when Mom moved back up here.
Your parents moved to Florida while you were here?
Yeah, my senior year of high school.
Interesting. What did you do? I don't know this part of your history.
For about a week and a half, I lived with Marilyn and Bob in the house I grew up in because they bought it from my parents when my parents moved. That wasn't working. So then I moved in with Uncle Rick.
Well,
Wow.
That being the case, it was more and more. We heard about it more and more often. And on the one hand, it was for women's rights, but it just became much more prevalent.
And that number, 53%
That's the highest.
in 1979.
yeah. And then in the 80s, it remained high, reflecting the changing lifestyles and the changing divorce laws. So things are evolving and continuing to change. However, the statistics did level off slightly, even starting to lower at the end of the decade. It's saying 1989, 47%. So I wonder if the whole the yuppies and the whole, because America kind of entered an age of abundance. Like when I think of the 80s, I think of like Top Gun and Wall Street and
Cocaine.
cocaine. I was going to say cocaine. But there was a general feeling of, okay, we're pretty good here at this point in time. I don't know.
Well, it begins a downward trend. And then we will talk about that next, why there is a downward trend.
In the 90s.
Yep.
So while divorces peaked during the 80s, rates declined in the late 90s, While this has been attributed to many factors like birth control and marriages later in life, the statistics from the U.S. Census in 2011 show that the rates making a steady downward trend.
And so as of 1999, it was 41%. All the way up to 2020, it was 15%.
That's an interesting stat right there. Like, everybody's stuck inside together, of course, so nobody's like, well, that was the perfect time to go file for divorce.
Except you couldn't.
Oh, did they?
The courts
So-
were closed.
Oh, right. Okay. So,
And
right.
it's saying in 2021 it was 20%.
So it went up 5% in a year.
But why?
Well, why did it go? Why
Down
was there
so
steady
far.
decline?
Yeah.
And there's several reasons, and I think they're brilliant.
Yeah, more couples are opting for cohabitation without legal marriage.
Oh, okay.
Millennials are waiting longer to get married than previous generations. Like
That's very true.
and I see like kids around, Ethan's friend group that don't want to get their license, like their driver's license.
That's
you know
such a
what I-
good point.
You know what I mean? Like,
I've-
wait,
I have a
I
daughter
don't get
like
my
that.
driver's license. I don't really want to get married because that's a big commitment.
I have so much to say.
I'd like to know. Sorry, before we move on
That's
from
all
that, I'd like to know how many of these, like, let's take that 41% in 1999. Like, how many of those are within the first few years of marriage? And like you're talking about, millennials waiting longer to get married. So if there are fewer young people getting married, does that mean there are fewer young people divorces? Because I would guess, I don't know the stats, that a lot of divorces happen in the first few years.
I read a stat about it when I was doing research for this. And yeah, I mean, it is in the first few years. The stat that is hilarious, I don't even know if I said this for later in the podcast or not. And by hilarious, I mean so sad, is like if you get married a second time, like the divorce rate is 65%. And if it's the third
wow.
time, it's like 75%.
I would have
You just
totally guessed the
continue-
opposite.
You continue to repeat the patterns. You're just doing it now with a different person
Absolutely.
who has their
Yeah.
own patterns.
And I give people the benefit of the doubt. Shame on me.
Sometimes, not all the
Like
time.
you.
Higher education levels for women correlate with longer lasting marriages.
Now that I find to be interesting
It is interesting.
because, yeah, I don't know why. Because you think if you go back to the 40s, 50s, 60s, as more women started to work, that gave them the ability to get divorced. So now they have higher education, so they stay married.
Fireworks.
Higher
Yeah.
education correlate with longer lasting marriages. So it doesn't necessarily
Causate.
right, exactly. But
It's
they're,
inconsistent
they're
with
trending
earlier
in the
decades.
same direction together.
But it could also mean now, if you want to look again at very good relationships, if the husband has higher education and the wife has higher education, well, they're much easier to meet each other's needs. They have more in common. Mutually giving, not to give a spoiler alert, is easier to do.
And there's probably a level of comfort that would be hard to give up. You have two higher educated people that are probably earning more, and so you develop the lifestyle that you become very accustomed to. And again, I would say, are you staying together because you're, hey, we're really smart and really know what we're talking about with marriage, or have you just crafted a lifestyle that's like, this is pretty good, having all this material stuff?
Well, and another thing is, you're tailing off. Yes, I don't want to step on your toes.
That's kind of the thought. Like, this is pretty good because we have all this material stuff. Why upset the apple cart?
Right. I don't know if that's the case. I hear what
I
you're
don't
saying
either.
because I think people get more and more selfish, and I have to have mine, and I have to seek my happiness, and I have to. But I think that's the case in some. But what I was going to point out is gone from my brain at this time.
Sorry.
So we could go the fact that not all separated couples file for legal divorce.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Let's stick with that for a minute. That hey, it's just easier. I don't want to have to go through this. It has been pointed out in a lot of the places I've, like different podcasts and stuff like that, different TV shows. Dr. Phil has said it, that the divorce proceedings, the divorce legal profession is a complete racket. With the judges and the attorneys, the only one who wins in a divorce are the attorneys.
Yeah.
And
That was
so,
the point I was making before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so, I think some people have gamed the system. Like, yeah, we don't live together. We have other boyfriends and girlfriends. We're just not going through the divorce. It's amicable. It's easier to keep the finances. The thing I was going to bring up, one that I forgot, which I've since remembered. I wonder, like, with the change in lifestyles, with the more permissive society in which we live, like, open marriages is a thing. And so I wonder how many of people who are not with their spouse, because open marriages are not very good relationships. Let me be very clear. And by open marriages, I mean you can have multiple partners, but you still only have one husband and one wife. Blows my mind anytime I see a special or a TV show about that. To be very clear, that does not make it a very good relationship. But I wonder if those are the kind of people that aren't getting divorced as often. Like half of those end up in murder cases, but that's also the only thing Rachel watches. But lastly, on the coronavirus pandemic.
That's delayed divorce proceedings across the nation in recent years.
Yeah. So, hey, the divorce rate's down. Yeah, we couldn't get into court.
Cancer rates up. Anyways. Because, yeah, like people just stopped being able to or being willing to go to a place to do the things that they need or want to do. So, you can't go down to the courthouse to file that paperwork. People were skipping their health screenings because they couldn't go into the office. So, it did
delay a lot of things. But it didn't mean, hey, man, during 2020, man, relationships are great. they were just really, everybody figured it out, What I want to talk about just for a minute is living together before marriage. They cite that couples are opting for cohabitation without legal marriage, or the fact, well, the one thing we left out was divorce rates are down, but marriage rates are even further down. Fewer people are even getting married. So there's less divorces, yeah, but there's even fewer marriages.
Cohabitation sounds like just such a cold word. Like we're cohabiting together.
Honey, I was thinking maybe it's time to take the next step. Let's cohabitate.
Yeah,
cohabitate.
It's not sexy at all.
Like, get out.
Yeah, right.
No.
Hey, let's go live together.
But I've heard that a lot as far as, hey, it's marriage practice. You can live together. And so they even cite that. Well, they say that people are cohabitating without being married. But is cohabitation before marriage, which, I mean, if I refused to marry somebody because they were living with their spouse, my marriage record would be like 2-1. I mean, everybody lives together now before they get married. So does that set you up for a very good relationship is a question I have for the table.
I think it can. Yeah. I mean, it's raw. Like if you're doing it, you're seeing all the flaws, you have that time and that track record to be able to really figure out, this really grinds my gears. I don't want any part of this. However, as we within a God-given beautiful design kind of a perspective of it, if God's bringing you together and you get to open a gift, you get to together explore a part of a journey, and if God's at the center of it and it is very good, regardless of those things that you're maybe looking for on the surface as the world does, those are the things that God can use to say, this is my beautiful design, and I'm using part of this to bring you closer to me, which is going to bring you closer to each other.
I got lost at the end. Was that evidence that it is good to live together before you're married? Or I'm saying
there's a couple different levels to look at it. If you're looking at it from a really faith-based perspective, okay. God is putting us together. We know that this is a God thing,
okay.
Right? And in that, there's a beautiful design to that. And in that beautiful design, we can learn to grow closer to God and closer to each other through the struggles and trials we may have. So
before we're married, and then after we get married, you're able to walk that out, right? You're able to draw closer to God because you're finding out things after you're married that if you were living together before you were married, you would have found that out and said, you know what, I'm out of here. And because, okay, so if you're looking at it just from a world perspective, we're going to live together and find out all the flaws. And if you don't have God as the center of that relationship, it's easy to go, you know what, we're just going to let this go.
Or we're going to jump into this, and on this level, we know that we can live with each other, right? But then as Christians, we believe that there's a beautiful design, right? We believe that God has an order to things. And so one of the cohesive things that God can do if you're putting your trust in him with your marriage, with your relationship, you're not going to find out all that stuff intimately that you would if you were just living together before you were married, right? So you get into it, and then you find out all that intimate stuff. Some of it you like, some of it you don't. But at that point, because you're centered on God in a faith-based way, you can use that to bring you closer to God and closer to each other because you're committed. It's an opportunity to grow together and not get lost and not just write it off, is what I'm saying. But to answer your question, I think on the world level, yes, it can be a good thing to live together before you're married.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, basically, because I'm on the same page as you.
I don't mean to be disrespectful at all.
Right.
I'm just trying to go ahead.
To dumb it down for me, like for me, like if you're a Christian, you believe in God, it doesn't matter. Like you shouldn't, like living together before you're married shouldn't matter to you guys after, because like you're gonna work through it. Like you have a sense of like a marriage is extremely important, and you'll work it out because you have a
reliance on God.
Right, reliance on God and belief in a higher power. And if you're looking, like you said, Brian, like from a worldly perspective, like yeah, like it's your opportunity. If you're looking at it purely from a worldly perspective, if you can look at it as an opportunity to see, yeah, this is going to work or this is not.
Let's kick the tires. If it doesn't work, we part ways, and there's no harm, no foul.
Right. Now, I don't think that's as beautiful as like working through the bad, or the hard things or the whatever, and like making your relationship stronger, like you said, Brian. Because like those things, like Amy, we've had to make adjustments, after we started living together. Like I don't know anybody who hasn't, but we're better for it.
I'll take it in a slightly different direction. I would say that my answer to that question, does living together before marriage help? A few years ago would have been absolutely yes. For the same reason you guys are saying about like, well, you get to know each other better that way. And I mean, obviously getting to know each other is an important thing in a relationship. The thing that has changed in my mind, and I'm not even saying that the living together before marriage is bad. That's not my point. But that just the relational needs, the emotional needs of my experience learning about relational emotional needs has helped, and Amy's too. Like it's helped our relationship, and we've been married and living together for over 20 years. You know what I mean? Like it's been a long time. But I guess my point is that whether you're living together before marriage or not, I think the most important thing is your mindset, and whether that's a spiritual mindset where you're going into it saying, okay, well, we're making a commitment before God, and so we're gonna stick through the thick and thin, or you're going into it, or I guess even better, additionally, you're going into it with, okay, I'm not going to be selfish in this relationship. I'm going to think about what my spouse's needs are, or at that time it could be, if it's before marriage, girlfriend, boyfriend's needs. Like, I just think that's a very important aspect of it. Like, does
Yours
the living together help?
Right. Yours is more the focus.
Where's the focus?
And
Yes.
the intent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Brian, again, I don't want to be disrespectful. What I was struggling with is you were saying, yeah, it's a good idea, but it's better if you're married and you have God at the center of your relationship. And so just to me, when I was hearing you, it was like you were arguing against yourself, and that's why I was looking confused puppy dog.
Yeah, it was more two sides of a coin. Like how are you looking? Are you looking at it through a godly perspective or through a worldly perspective? Because like if I'm going to be honest, if I'm looking at it through a worldly perspective, yeah, I can certainly see the benefits of that. I also can see the almost not terror, but am I going to wake up and is this person going to be here tomorrow?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like to live
Which
on
sadly a lot of married people wake up to every day as well.
Well,
who
true.
don't have Christ at the center relationship. A lot of Christian people wake up wondering the same thing because they don't have the intent to keep each other from feeling alone.
I guess it goes across the board then, huh?
Well, and my answer is twofold. If I'm going to be a pastor and speaking from a godly perspective, to think that, and by the way, I'm leaving sexual intimacy out of this equation. So I'm saying a Christian guy and a Christian girl living together, not having sex before married. I'm not even addressing that.
Right.
To think that the two become one when they become married, not when they move in together.
Right.
And that is one of the most crucial components of a marriage is that you are one. We have a problem with, not you have a problem. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. That you say to your wife,
It's the perspective, yeah.
right? We have a problem we've got to overcome. Not I have a problem with you. And it really is. It's the new creation. Well, the new creation hasn't started yet. If you're just cohabitating,
Right.
now the secular logic is what you guys have talked about. Not you, because you pointed out intent. It's good practice. It's marriage practice. Hey, we're learning it. And I was once, I don't even remember where it was, but a guy said, no, it isn't. It's divorce practice. Because you move in with somebody and you find, like you said, the things you don't like, all the ugly things. So what do? Well, you move out.
Right.
Okay,
And
so
then
then you
you
move in with the next girl.
And the same thing.
And then you eventually do get
Yeah,
married.
and I guess I'm like I'm so stuck on us like talking about emotional needs. I'm like, well,
Yeah, who's doing that though?
that's what I mean. Like if it was that, and you did it with intention of working through things, then yeah, that would make more sense. But yeah, no.
And Brian, you were just going to say, then you do get married.
Right. You've moved in and out with 3-4 times. So again, you've developed patterns and expectations within yourself, and then you find the one, and it's just as easy to do that.
Right. You've conditioned yourself. When things get rough, somebody moves out. So regardless, I don't believe it creates a very good relationship. And in closing, I just want to go over a few of the characteristics of what a very good marriage is, because we looked at statistics, decades, we see all these different impacts of external and sometimes internal factors. But if you have a very good relationship, none of those will affect. And so the characteristics of very good relationships is intimacy within each other's lives, not just sexual intimacy, but really knowing, like you said, Chris, in being intentful and having great intention, I should say, of knowing what your spouse is like, what the people, and again, this is the same is true of parents and children, friends. Like we know each other very well. We can giggle all we want. We have a very intimate relationship with one another.
Yeah.
We know each other's strengths and weaknesses. That's the sign of a very good relationship. If you're not aware of it and you don't have that, it's not a very good relationship.
Right. And this, but you're specifically saying of a good marriage.
Good relationships.
Okay. Yeah.
Interchangeable.
Because, we do the four of us, our families, we have really good relationships. And I think that a lot of these characteristics are there.
Right. And even if you look at the people that didn't get divorced in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and the Leave It to Beavers and everything else, when I would talk to my mother and different of the older generation, they're like, honey, we didn't do this.
Right.
Like, we didn't do any of that. We just existed.
Right.
Secondly, trials and tribulations bring couples closer together.
Right.
That's the we again, like
Yeah.
you were saying before, instead of
You brought it up, I think it was. Or you pointed it
and
out.
unintentionally, maybe, yeah. But yeah, it's not I have a problem with you or you have a problem with something out there. It's whatever the trial or tribulation is, you do it together.
All 4 types of needs are being met.
Physical, emotional, spiritual, and the other one, intellectual.
Yeah.
So intellectual, spiritual, emotional, and physical,
And financial. No, I don't.
which would be physical.
Yeah.
Those are all. You can't be leaving one of those out there. In a very good relationship, we're meeting all 4 needs.
There is an upward trend of the quality and intimacy of the relationship.
I like the upward trend.
Sure. Yeah, there's
'cause
ups and
it's-
downs.
Yeah.
But your downs are still better than your downs for 10 years ago. You know, and Rachel and I surviving the trade days and everything else, it's not like we've had absence of tough times, but boy, we're handling them a whole lot better now. And that goes to the last point.
It's an important acknowledgement. That I'm sorry. How many times have I said I'm sorry during this episode? I'm sorry about
Half
that.
as many as your son would have.
Awesome. It's an important point to know that it doesn't, like, literally, you're going to have that jagged line of ups and downs that fit into really every bit of our existence, right? But the trend line is
It's important. A very
Yeah.
good relationship trends upward.
right.
And lastly,
It is not the absence of conflict, but the overcoming of it.
I mean, if I didn't write that myself, I would say it's brilliant.
Because the absence of conflict a lot of times means the avoidance of conflict.
My parents never fought.
Yeah.
Never fought. Never argued. That was not a good relationship. But it's being able to work through them and grow and to meet each other's needs, to learn how to apologize, to grow. That is the key to a good relationship.
And that is how we'd like to end episode 202. So please make sure to give us a like or follow on social media. Visit us at lunchtimeinrome.com. While there, take our relational needs questionnaire. Thanks for joining us at the table for Lunchtime in Rome.
See you next week.
Goodbye.
Got to go get rid of this tick. Bye.
Oh.